Welcome,
Hi.
everyone. Welcome to another live. We're talking milk supply today. I'm Mary. I'm the pink blob in the center because I'm having technical difficulties with my camera.
I'm Shevonne.
And I'm Elizabeth. Woo! So we're Open Arms Lactation Support Peer Counseling Team, and we are here. We are doing our twice a month Facebook Lives to share information with folks and talk about all the different things in lactation that we hear out in the world and think that you all might be interested in. We love community interaction. So if you folks have any questions or thoughts or anything, personal experiences that you want to share in the chat, please just add it here. And also, if you are watching this after the live broadcast, feel free to add it on there because we definitely monitor the Facebook page and are happy to respond if you have any questions that come up from our chat. So we're basically going to be talking about milk supply because it's this big nebulous thing that a lot of times, especially before we have a baby or along the journey, sometimes, it's this thing that we hear a lot. It's like my milk supply. And it's usually in context of folks thinking they have, more often I hear a lot of folks worried that they have undersupply and occasionally oversupply and the things that come along with that. And so we just kind of want to talk about what even is a milk supply and how do you keep it on track to what it should be, which I always try to reframe as what works for you and your
Should
baby.
be.
Yeah, should.
Yeah, so Mary, it's so hard because I can't see when you're talking.
Know. Go ahead, Shevonne.
Oh, I was just going to ask you guys, like, when people are talking about supply with you, what are the most common things that you hear, like questions that they ask? Like for me, I often hear like, one, am I making enough? I've fed my baby. I'm trying to store up a supply, in my freezer for when I return to work or for when baby's left with another provider. And I'm just not getting anything. I'm just getting drops or I'm getting, 2 ounces. I'm just curious, like what are the common things that you hear?
Yeah, that's a really common thing I hear a lot too. And we were talking just before this, and I want to share it here, is I feel like the internet is really a blessing and a curse for nursing people. And one of the things that is like so cool about the internet is we get to all share our journeys, and so folks get to share their triumphs and their challenges, and that's awesome. And I'm really happy that people can connect that way. And sometimes it can also lead to this like really overwhelming anxiety because we see what other people are doing and we compare our journey to other people's. Mm-hmm. And sometimes, if folks are sitting down and then scrolling and seeing someone open a freezer full of milk and be like, wow, here's 5,000 ounces. And they just nursed a 2-week-old baby and then thought, oh, I'll pump and get 2 drops and then start this spiral of despair thinking I'm supposed to have 5,000 ounces in my freezer. It just sets up all of these really unrealistic expectations and demands on ourselves and our bodies and our babies because we haven't really created yet a culture of being super open about the whole spectrum of what this looks like for most people. So really what we often see on the internet are sort of extremes. So people think either you need to have giant freezers full of milk or you have undersupply. And I hear a lot of people talking about being just enoughers as a bad thing. And I just want to really reaffirm everyone to kind of change that framing. When you are feeding your baby and you are making milk to feed your baby, you're making exactly the right amount of milk. It's not just enough. It's not barely enough. it's not any other sort of scarcity idea. It's exactly enough. And that's awesome.
Yeah. That's so important for people to hear, and remember. Our babies really are the ones that determine what our supply looks like. And so, some babies do require more milk. They require more calories. And so for folks that have babies that do require more calories or more milk, more food, they're going to make more. It's truly that supply and demand, on demand rather. Yeah.
Yeah, and also like some bodies are super enthusiastic and they'll just, make a ton of milk. And also I would caution us all to remember that heavy oversupply comes with a lot of challenges too. And so we don't want to be instigating that in ourselves and setting ourselves up for the challenges and things that come along with that, because like you said, it's supply and demand as well as supply on demand. So if you are getting going on your lactation journey and feeding baby and then thinking that you're needing to stack a bunch of milk in the freezer and then starting to pump, you're literally setting up a situation in which you're going to create an oversupply. And then with oversupply often comes plugged ducts and mastitis and being basically chained to the pump, because once you create this supply, it has to be maintained. You have to be expressing it on a regular basis. Otherwise, that milk stasis that builds up in the mammary glands can be painful, first of all, and then can also lead to all of these other health problems. So we really, really want to focus, especially on in the early days of creating just making the milk the baby needs. And there are absolutely folks who have challenges making milk, and I don't want to downplay that, but more often than not, what we see is more of it is rooted in social pressure that is telling us that we're not enough. Our own anxieties, which is super valid, and we need to work through in other ways, rather than inducing an oversupply. And then those of us, so my personal journey included one baby where I took it as a personal thing. I have undersupply. I didn't actually have a physiological undersupply. I had an inefficient baby who did not create a full milk supply in those formative weeks. And that's a really important distinction, because oftentimes when we're talking about low supply, really the crux is that you have an inefficient baby. And so we need to be helping baby. The person who feels they have an undersupply is going to be coming at it as a my body is failing perspective, and be trying to address it through teas and galactagogues and supplements and et cetera, and like choking down gallons of brewer's yeast, and man, that stuff is terrible. It tastes awful.
What was it?
Brewer's yeast.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And all of the supplements in the world are not going to change a physiological supply that is created by supply and demand if your baby is not pulling your milk efficiently. And so I think that's just a lot of words to say. If you feel like you're having an undersupply, like touch base with someone, whether that's if you have a local IBCLC that you can check in with, if you're in King County and you want to set up a relationship with one of us, or drop into a lactation lounge. And you can drop into a lactation lounge from anywhere, not King County necessarily. But one-on-one appointments with us are in King County. But whatever your resources, check in, because it's really about getting to where is the problem originating, as opposed to just always assuming our body is failing, because actually more often than not, it's not our body. We wake up in the morning, we don't worry that our heart's not going to beat, or that our kidneys aren't going to filter our blood, or whatever, and in that same way that, yeah, some of those things occasionally don't work. Some folks do have insufficient glandular tissue, but most of the time these issues are rooted somewhere else.
Mm-hmm. So we often, you're saying like we put the onus on us and our bodies, where it should really be like this relationship with your baby and getting them efficiently latched and feeding well to create that supply and demand.
Yeah.
And supply on demand. Yeah. That's great. One of the things that when I hear or when I get asked if somebody's making enough milk, is I always think about the output of the baby, how many diapers they're going through in a week or, in a day. And with newborns and in the early life, it's the output I found is usually corresponds with their age, right? So if they're like 2 days old, they're going to have like 2 to 4 diapers, wet diapers a day, and so on. After a week, it should be like 6 to 8 or more. So that's what I tell my people too. What about you? What other questions come up when you're helping these nursing parents?
So yeah, definitely output in the really early days, looking at the transition of the meconium to poop. Sorry, I don't know what else to call it right now. But like that's what it is. It's baby boo. So it starts off when it's meconium, is that like really dark, tarry, sticky, bowel movements that's oftentimes hard to wipe off. And then it, as the days go on and your second milk comes in, and it's not just the colostrum, but the colostrum mixed with all the other, good stuff like the water and sugars and fats. You'll see baby's poop start to transition to that yellow, seedy, breast milk baby poop that we often see. And another thing that I always talk about with folks is, watching baby for signs of being satisfied and full, right? So if you're, feeding your baby and you notice they've fallen asleep and that's a good sign. Their hands are relaxed. That's another sign that they are full and fed and probably milk drunk. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Elizabeth, do you have other?
No, I mean, I think those are all super good points. And we touched on how last week we really talked about how to make sure how we know we're making enough. And so I think also just recognizing that, when we see all of those signs, that it's really important to lean into trusting them and trusting our baby, and our instincts, and not being swayed by thinking we should be doing more. I think that one of the things about milk supply that I really try to emphasize with folks is that this is a hard process on our body. Like, yes, it's natural. Yes, it's physiological. And it takes a lot of energy. So our bodies are not, for the most part, there's those outliers, the people who just really naturally make a ton of milk. And those people are also gifts to communities in many ways, often, like donating milk and whatnot. But for the most part, the kind of standard lactating person, it's a lot of work. And so our bodies want to be efficient. Our bodies want to make right there in the sweet spot of what we are asking for. So, again, just recognizing that we don't need to be trying to push for this like huge stash, this huge, like, just kind of leaning into the process and recognizing that once we make sure that the nursing is going well, if we're nursing baby directly at the body and that's going well, that milk supply is going to do what it needs to do. People's milk don't just dry up. If there is a problem, it's usually rooted somewhere else. Like, I think when we talk about milk supply, we're so focused on my body is going to fail at any given moment, and that like the milk I have today is not promised tomorrow. But it's actually this like very simple mechanical process that is also requires fuel. So we need to be eating our extra, calories, our nutrition, our hydration is important. Our bodies will take it from us before they will take it from our baby. So our body systems and our health will suffer. So it's really important that we take care of our bodies. You as a human deserve food and hydration. And the lactation process is a lot of energy. And so just recognizing that we want that to be efficient. We're not wanting to demand our bodies to feed 4 babies if we only have 1 baby. Feed 1 baby. That's great. That's perfect. That's not an undersupply. You're feeding 1 baby. That's a lot of work. You're doing great. That's it. I don't know. Anyone have any questions? Or is this like the world's shortest topic?
What I love is that everything it's so holistic. So I feel like it's kind of a short topic because we've touched on all the points with the milk supply because it's such a broad and holistic view. One thing leads to another. Mm-hmm. It's this great symbiotic relationship. So yeah, it is surprising.
I know, no questions or anything. So yeah, I would just again remind folks like it's a mechanical system, supply and demand, and we're really not trying to push it into that high, overproduction. And if you're feeling like things are starting to peter down, increasing that demand is going to increase that supply. So, and again, focusing on that really efficient milk removal. So, having baby go to breast more often, or if you're at work, increasing your pumping, and making sure that when you are nursing or pumping, that it is effective. And more stimulation is more effective than longer. So if you're like, wow, I feel like I need to kind of boost things up. And there's definitely times where that happens. If your period is coming back for the first time, oftentimes that is truly, we'll see a hormonal dip at that period because it often corresponds to baby getting bigger, older, sleeping through the night. Our body is responding by saying, oh, okay, this baby doesn't rely on you so heavily for survival. Let's make another one. You don't have to agree with your body on that. But so in response, the body often will have a hormonal dip that will cause a slightly lower milk supply for that period of time. And so you can combat that with various different things, usually increasing that demand and just telling the body, no, you got it wrong. We still need all this milk. And so increasing the amount of times you're bringing baby to breast or amount of times you're pumping. And again, those more increased quantity of stimulation. So if you're able to do, it's just like cluster feeding, bringing baby to breast more often or doing more increased pumping sessions. It doesn't necessarily help to do more prolonged pumping sessions because your body kind of tunes out. So that's where power pumping can come into play. Sorry, my light just got all weird. I feel like I'm in a horror movie now. So power pumping is great for increasing milk supply because it's those short, repetitive pumping sessions in an hour span that mimic cluster feeding. Cluster feeding also is more effective than just having baby snoozing at the breast. Snoozing at the breast is really lovely and comfy and snuggly and excellent. And can increase milk supply in a passive way in just that skin to skin way, but is not as effective as baby actually coming to breast, actively suckling, and then taking a break. because oftentimes when they're snoozing at the breast, they're not actually removing the milk. They're just kind of having a love sesh, and that's cool too. So know that when they're doing that, it's with a purpose.
Yeah, those are all really good points. Sorry, I keep muting we've got folks out here blowing leaves everywhere, and so it's a lot of background noise. But yes, everything that you've just said, Elizabeth, is exactly what I share with folks as well, and really good points for people to remember.
Cool. All right. Is that milk supply handled?
I think so. All
right.
So next time we return with our holiday series.
Yes. I'm really excited about this. So I think holiday stuff, and I also want to just take a quick second to recognize that this isn't everyone's holiday season, and we work with different communities who experience various different celebrations that happen throughout the different times of the year. And so we picked this time just because there's a fair amount of folks who are going to be celebrating different things. There's a lot of places that will be taking time off, etc. But we also hope that all of the tips and the information that we share, if you are celebrating holidays or celebrations at different points throughout the year, that these will be relevant to that. And we also want to make sure that folks know that we see you and honor all the holidays and celebrations, not just the ones that are coming up in November and December. And for some folks, particularly probably all of our communities, like some of the ones coming up in November aren't necessarily celebrations for us, but there will be time off, and there will be travels, and there will be different ways that we participate in our family lives.
Oh, do we have a question?
No, did the screen do that thing for you guys?
It did. It was, we were getting a little countdown.
Yeah, that was weird.
Oh, that is weird. Okay. That might have.
So,
we're still
on.
I'm excited. So that's good. Okay.
Yeah, we are. I'm excited for the series coming up as well. And I think that what we'll be talking about will be relevant throughout the year. So I hope to see y'all there. And Elizabeth, we do have our series posted on the page. So if y'all want to check that out and maybe get your questions ready, we'd love to see your questions as we're going through the lives and answer them on air.
Yeah. Excellent.
Cool. Get those messages or questions in. And also we have a lactation lounge after this. With myself and Faisa Farole. So I can put the Zoom link in the chat. But yeah.
Awesome. Great thinking, Mary.
Thank you.
All right. Well, it's good seeing y'all.
Oh, yeah. Thanks, everyone. See you later.
See you later, everyone.